a speeding tram. No emergency braking. The Sandylands disaster. Here, 7 people were killed, over 50 injured. For the first time, we hear from drivers who've fallen asleep on duty, their fears over the onboard safety device. We reveal the tram's still going too fast. And 5 months on, the family's waiting for answers. Have you fallen asleep?
Yeah, it's happened to me once in 10 years.
This Croydon tram driver would only speak to us if we protected his identity and changed his voice. How many drivers do you think have fallen asleep in the cabin?
I would have to say most drivers have at some point in their careers.
He's admitting what many would consider gross misconduct because of this. It's called the traction brake controller, or TBC, the driving lever that powers the tram. Inside, the safety device known as the dead man's handle. This driver says when he fell asleep, it didn't work. Was there an alarm?
No.
Was there any emergency braking?
No, none whatsoever. My hand remained on the TBC. That was enough to keep the dead man's handle from being activated.
Why aren't drivers telling the operators what's going wrong?
If we were to come forward and say, "Excuse me, I fell asleep," I think you'd just be dismissed.
But we're talking about people's lives here. The most important people are the passengers.
Yes, yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And this man isn't alone. 4 drivers have told the BBC they'd fallen asleep in the cab.
I woke up about 10 metres after the tram stop.
Conrad is one. After 16 years, he retired last year. In 2005, his tram rolled through George Street. He was asleep.
A person was very fortunate that I didn't run them over.
Was there any alarm?
No, there was no alarm.
Was there any emergency braking?
No, there wasn't any emergency braking.
So no dead man's handle, it didn't kick in?
It didn't kick in, as we were advised that it should have done.
We've been told of 3 other incidents where drivers are believed to have been incapacitated. One was a collision with buffers at Elmer's End. Another was a tram driver here at Morden Road, spotted sleeping in a moving tram by ticket inspectors who had to wake him up by ringing the cab.
Send it off to TfL.
And then there's this. Drivers asked us to watch the footage again. A tram driver who appears to be asleep. There's no alarm, no emergency brakes.
Are you going to stop the tram?
That driver is incapacitated. He is asleep. Had that been in another location, that could have been another disaster. The alarm should be sounding and the tram should be stopping. That's what the video should be depicting, but it's not.
Transport for London is responsible for the line. We asked why the dead man's handle in this video didn't activate.
I think you'll see that he's in and out of a sleep, isn't he? He's coming to and starting to doze and coming to and starting to doze.
Why was there no alarm? Why was there no braking?
Well, because if he were to completely pass out, if he were to completely lose consciousness, then he would relax his grip.
But it's okay just to slightly doze in and out like we saw in the video footage?
Of course it's not all right.
The company who operates the trams for TfL, Tram Operations Limited, says driver fatigue is monitored and on the driver's safety device says it's satisfied the controls are fully functional. It's important to consider what these driver's safety devices are meant to do. Designed in part if a driver collapses after a heart attack. But we found this guidance on the regulator's website, the Office of Rail and Road. It says the DSD should be designed so that it cannot be kept in the operating position other than by a vigilant tram driver. Drivers have also told us about specific faults with the driver's safety device. We've obtained this video of an empty tram out of service powering itself. We understand this is an extreme setting and TfL has now rectified the problem on all trams.
The spring was obviously broken in the DSD and the tram just drove itself.
This former driver didn't want to be identified. He claims the alarm on the driver's safety device first delayed, then completely failed in May 2016. Did you report these concerns?
I called the control room, the engineering department knew about it, and they said that they were aware of it, but it's completely safe to carry on. I had to raise my voice over the recorded radio system and say to them, if I had a heart attack or become unconscious, this tram will go through the buffers at Beckenham Junction at 50 miles an hour. Only when I said that, they said, take it out of service straight away.
And not just engineers, this man said other drivers were also aware.
Some drivers found it worrying, but they found it amusing in a way that you could drive without using your hands.
We've also discovered the safety regulator wasn't made aware of the incident. The Office of Rail and Road told us all DSD failures should be reported to them.
They should have pulled the entire fleet of trams in and tested every single one of them, but they didn't.
In a statement, the operators, Tram Operations Limited, said there was not a full failure of the driver's safety device. Passengers were not at risk and the tram was examined and the fault was rectified the next day. Transport for London said despite that fault, the tram was still operating safely. We can also reveal at least 3 trams have been recorded speeding since the Sandylands derailment. One was travelling at 65 kilometres per hour in a 40 zone. Another was speeding close to the disaster site itself. The operator told us it had increased speed checks since the Sandylands crash.
All we know is that the tram was speeding at 43.5.
And still waiting for answers, the families of those who died. People like Anne Seary, who lost her husband Phil.
My daughters are just devastated. It's changed my life. He did everything for us. He was our rock. He took care of everything. Everyone that was on that tram that day has changed their lives. The others that managed to walk away living nightmares.
What is the one question you want answering?
Why? Why?
Investigators are trying to answer that question, to piece together a disaster that changed so many lives.